Hello, and welcome to the National Museum of the Pacific War. My name is Bryan Degner, the Education Outreach Coordinator, and I am standing here at our PT boat exhibit on board a replica of a USS Navy vessel referred to as a tender. Now, the tender was taking care of these torpedo boats like the one beside me. Now, before the start of World War II, the Navy was looking for a small, fast, mobile attack vessel that could launch torpedoes at larger enemy vessels and then quickly make an escape. So a competition was held, and 3 companies were awarded contracts to build the patrol torpedo boats. Those companies were Elco, Higgins, and Huckins. And of the 3, Elco produced the majority of the PT boats. Now, just over 600 were built, and of those, 531 were actually commissioned into service for the United States Navy. Now, they're going to become known as the Mosquito fleet, and Walt Disney is going to help design the logo. It will be a mosquito wearing a sailor hat and carrying a torpedo. Now, these boats might have been small, but they could sting or bite the enemy. And the Japanese hated patrol torpedo boats. They referred to them as the devil boats. Why? Because after the Battle of Guadalcanal, the Japanese changed their tactics when it came to moving men and supplies. Instead of using large naval vessels, they began to use barges that would hug the coastline of these islands throughout the Pacific. Now, our larger naval vessels could not get into those shallow waters, but the PT boat could, and they would get in close. Unable to use their torpedoes in the shallow water, they would use their other arms on board the vessel, and they would bust those barges up, wreaking tremendous havoc on the Japanese and their ability to reinforce or resupply their men. Now, let's take a look at this artifact that I have behind me, a real combat veteran patrol torpedo boat. It is Patrol Torpedo Boat 309, built by the Higgins Company and commissioned into service in 1944. It's 78 feet in length. It's made almost entirely out of wood, primarily mahogany, and it's held together by glue, canvas, screws, and rivets. Now, the boat's armed with, on the bow or the front of the boat, a 20-millimeter gun. On either side of the bridge, you're going to find twin 50 caliber machine guns. It also carried 4 torpedoes, depth charges that could be used on suspected Japanese submarines, and on the stern or the rear of the boat, you would find a 40-millimeter gun. The vessel was powered by 3 1,500 power Packard engines, which gave the vessel a top speed of 40 knots or around 48 miles per hour. It carried 3,000 gallons of 100% high-octane fuel, and it gave the PT boat a range of about 500 miles. Now let's talk about the crews that manned these vessels. They would carry anywhere from 11 to 17 men. The average age was 25 years of age or younger. And it was probably better that these guys were young to ride on these PT boats in these rough waters. The ride was oftentimes compared to a cross between a merry-go-round and a bucking bronco. Now, the crew were oftentimes looked upon as being undisciplined, in part because they weren't always dressed in their spit and polish uniforms, but that was because of the environment that they were living in there in the Pacific. But just because they might have not been dressed in their spit and polish type uniform did not mean that they did not take their job seriously. When engaging the enemy, they were all business. Now, they were also known for being very resourceful. If there were weapons that they believed could give them an advantage over the enemy, and they had not been issued these weapons, they would pull what we called a midnight requisition, where they would go out, they would locate these weapons. They did not steal them. They simply borrowed them for a period of time. It just might be a while before they bring them back. The PT boats saw action in the European and Pacific theater. They would be involved in the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and they would continue to serve until the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay, bringing an end to World War II. This small wooden craft, the Mosquito fleet, the barge buster, the devil boat, They were considered, pound for pound, the most heavily armed vessel in the United States Navy in World War II. I want to thank you for tuning in for today's segment of the Nimitz Minutes, and I hope that you will come back and visit us for the next segment of the Nimitz Minute.